There we go. Hey, welcome to the Colin Grace Show. So blessed today to have one of my favorite helicopter operators, David Arnold. We worked on Deadliest Catch together. It was quite quite the adventure, to say the least. Super stoked to have him on. His book just came out recently. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, my name is David Arnold. I'm the helicopter cameraman of Deadliest Catch, Amazing Race, World Series, Super Bowl, Monday Night Football, NASCAR. We're doing World Cup next week.
All the fun stuff.
Yeah, a lot of interesting offices to work in around
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when I met you, I'm trying to think the very first time I actually physically met you, we were sitting up in the office and you came in and you were in your flight suit and at the time you guys had to like go through all this special training and stuff and have a special deal up in Alaska on Deadliest Catch. And like you came in like full on. I was like, holy crap, this guy's like full on military, but yet you had that hat on, and I was like, what? Like, who is this guy? And
Yeah, it's fun.
yeah,
Yeah, it's funny. When we work on Deadliest Catch in the helicopter, um, I have a flight suit that is an interesting combination of fire resistant, waterproof,
hmm,
and it's insulated.
right,
So it's it's supposed to stop you from burning to death or freezing to death.
right, yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Do you remember the company Mustang? They make all those, yeah, like because when I was on the back of the boat, um they gave me like I didn't have to wear a full crazy water outfit, but they gave me a Mustang harness, and it's like it's super low profile, so you can still work and you really didn't feel like you were wearing it much. um and that was like I was shocked by that, like how amazing that worked. And they when I was done with that with Deadliest Catch, I actually reached out to them because they found my Instagram, and they wanted some of the pictures that you took from the helicopter, and they wanted like I was like, hey man, I'm like, yeah, use all these photos. And then they gave me like I've got like a coupon for like 50% off all their stuff, but I haven't really had a need for it lately.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah,
Yeah, great company.
people. Yeah, I don't think people necessarily realize how quickly the water of Deadliest Catch will kill you.
Oh,
Um, It was season one of Deadliest Catch. Someone fell out of one of the boats, and it was best case scenario. They saw him go over the side because if you watch Deadliest Catch, a lot of times you'll see the captains in the wheelhouse just like
yeah.
staring intently
Yeah.
at their deck, and
The death stare. Yeah.
what they're doing is they're being super vigilant because they're one of their worst nightmares is a guy gets knocked over or pulled over
Yeah.
the side and no one sees.
Right.
And then by the time they figure out someone's missing, they don't even know where to start looking or how long ago he fell out of the boat. So,
Yeah.
um, so the first season of Deadliest Catch, someone fell into the water and it was best case scenario. They saw him go.
Was it
So
wasn't that on camera though? I think it was in an
no, it wasn't.
episode. Oh,
It
that
they
maybe not the
talked
first
about it.
season, but yeah.
Well, it's happened different times in the history of the show, but on
Right.
season one, someone fell out, and the story that I was told was that it was the best case scenario. They saw him go. So when that happens, someone runs to the rail and does nothing but keep an eye on that
Right.
guy and make sure they know
Yep.
where he is so that as the captain starts to maneuver to get
Right.
around to try and pick up their lost crew member, they know where he is at all times. And but by the time they turned the boat around and the guys were reaching down to grab him out of the water,
Uh-huh.
they said he had already
He
passed
couldn't move.
away.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh my
and
God.
that's a challenging place to work.
And Dave, who's the DP? I can't remember his last name, but it's David.
David
Uh,
Reichert.
yeah, David Record. So it blew my mind, like working with David, because I worked on season 12 with you guys. But David had talked to me a lot about like because he also does Bering Sea Gold, which is that under the water, they drill a hole, they go they go under like 4 feet of ice and go like gold mining. And he's the underwater camera operator for that also. So he does Deadliest Catch and he does that. And he also does like Blue Planet. I mean, he's an underwater magician, but um it was wild. Like, cause I was talking to him and the fact that those guys are on rebreathers and they're under a hole and there's basically like there's the hole that the ice miners go in, and then there's like maybe a hole for them to get in if they don't use the same hole, but they're also on rebreathers because all the bubbles are going to ruin. When you're filming, you want to be on a rebreather, and how the rebreathers freeze up, and like, oh, he was telling me these crazy stories, man. Like, it was pretty
It's
wild. I mean, I was like, I'm on the back of the boat thinking like, this is sketchy, and then he's telling me these stories, and I'm like, no, not that that's sketchy. And then I'm like, you're up in a helicopter over the Bering Sea going. I'm like, well, that's probably sketchier. I was like, I mean
yeah,
that whole job had a lot of there was a lot of risk, but it was the product is amazing. The outcome.
well, what did you think when they said they wanted you to go work on this show?
So I got a call because basically, everyone knows that I do water work and I grew up on boats. I was born in the Caribbean. I was born in the British Virgin Islands. I grew up on boats my whole life. So like me and boats and water, all good. And then in the film industry, I've been a dolly grip from pretty much day one. And I've also done cranes and basically, as a dolly grip, you're kind of a crane grip. It all kind of like it all kind of like leads into the same thing. So I've always been like a crane grip, a dolly grip. I grew up on boats, and I had a reputation as like when there was a weird project and everyone said no, it's sketchy or I don't want to do it. I always got the call. Like it was, I was known as the guy that's like, hey, we want to do this thing that's like super sketchy, and they're like, call that guy. So yeah, I mean, I got a call from the producers, and I went to Chapman Leonard. They dropped off a shipping container there. I loaded up a crane, pulled all the parts I wanted, shoved it all in a shipping container, threw it on a boat, and that went up there. And originally, I was supposed to have my best boy with me. And about a week before we were supposed to leave, they were like, "We can't afford to fly your best boy, so it's just going to be you." And I was like,
Oh boy.
I was like, hey man, I'm like, you don't understand. Like, this is super sketchy. It's a 40-foot boat with a 20-foot crane on it. I'm like, you do the math. Like it's a lot of crane and a lot of boat. And I'm like, when you have a 20-foot crane on a 40-foot boat and you're on the back of it and you're the only guy operating, it's pretty dicey. So they're like, well, we'll give you a guy when we get here. So do you remember the craft service lady? And
I'm
she
pretty
had a
sure I do.
son, and her son was living in his car in the parking lot with his wife because it's all I don't want to get into too much, but basically they were like, here's your guy, and they gave me this kid who was like, I think he was like 20, maybe 21, living in his car, and they're like, here's your guy, and I was like, okay. So day one, we go out, and I basically just kept him away from it, and we stayed in the harbor, just getting the feel of it all. And day two, I got up in the morning, and remember I used to go up to the helicopter and I was pulling the gimbal off the helicopter in the morning, um, and put it in the back of the truck to put it on because you at some point you had the gimbal on the helicopter, but I was stealing it off and putting it on the crane,
Mhm.
and I go onto the boat and I'm mounting it. I'm like, where's the kid? Where's the kid? And they're like, oh yeah, he got in a bar fight last night. He's in jail. And I was like, Okay. So day two, I went out solo. And that's when we all realized the crane was too long, and I took 10 feet off the crane, and we
Oh,
reassessed the whole program. But yeah, it's funny if you look at I was actually looking at the photo that you took, that amazing shot that you got of me on the back with the crane sticking out, and I think that's when it was cut down to 10 feet. I think I that's when I took 10 feet off the crane, and don't don't tell Dave, but I didn't really ask permission. I basically came in day three in the morning, and I just was like, I came up early and I just took 10 feet off the crane, put it right together, and I put the camera on it, and we went out, and no one knew the difference. It wasn't until about lunch someone's like, this doesn't seem the same as it was, but the thing is you couldn't tell because of the
right.
when you're shooting on a 300 mil lens, and you're shooting like super long lens on a gimbal, you know, and it was a safety thing. I was just like, I was at that point where I was like, if I had another grip with me, I run it all day long. But and honestly, the shots we got with the 20-foot section were awesome. That's when we went boat to boat. It was a Wild Bill and us. We pulled up, and I got the crane up over his boat looking down. And that's you couldn't have got that shot any other way other than like a drone, but it wouldn't have been the same. A crane shot and a drone shot's not the same thing. So we got up and over and got this overhead shot. But even then, like, when you have a 100-foot boat and you have 40-foot boat, and they're that close together, that just that momentum, like at one point, a wave hit, they came down, and I'm armed up over it, and I almost got caught up in their rigging, and then waves started, like, just, I mean, I can't tell you how wet I got on that job. I got soaked so many times.
Well, to me, 40 foot's a small boat up there.
It is, yeah, it's nothing. It's, I mean, yeah, it was. I had Captain Jimmer, which
Oh
was on
yeah,
the Miss Alyssa.
great guy.
Oh man, he is an amazing guy. Like, I really like. I think one of the best experiences of being up there, honestly, was like he like, by the time I left, he gave me a jacket. He called me his first mate, and I was like, I gave him one of my hillbilly grip jackets, and I was like, we actually still talk. We still once in a while, like, we'll send photos back and forth.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, he's such a great guy. So tell me about the book, man.
The book. Well, I had to write a book about who I am and what I do.
Hmm.
So, um, as I started writing the book, uh, I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he said, "Well, Dave, I think you should start the book with one of your stories." And I thought, "Ooh, well, I've never told my stories publicly."
Yeah.
And so I sat down, and as I started writing stories, I thought, oh, well, this was a spectacular adventure that happened in this country, and I almost died. I should probably put that in the book. And as I was writing, it just kind of dawned on me, if I'm really honest about the problems that created this life and death nightmare I was in, if I'm really honest about it, it was mostly due to my stupidity and mistakes. And so I wrote the story that way, and I
Hmm.
included the truth about it.
Yeah.
And as I got to different stories, the more I got into them, the more I realized, most of the crazy and sometimes terrible adventures I've had were generally due to me doing dumb things or just not
Trying
thinking,
to trying to get that shot.
just not thinking of the things
Yeah.
that normal people think of as far
Yeah.
as safety and things like that. And
Well, I mean, the film industry, it breeds that. It
Well,
really
then it
does.
was then it was a perfect environment for me
Yeah.
because I I have done a lot of dumb things, and I'll pretty much say yes to just about anything. And
That's how I ended up on Deadliest Catch. I
oh,
was
there
like,
you go.
I was the guy. Like, they're like, that guy will do anything.
Yeah. So as I wrote the stories in the book, I decided to be honest and just admit how many of my problems were just
Hmm.
my mistakes. And as I was writing the book, I thought, you know, honestly, this is probably the best things to include anyways,
Yeah.
because especially for young people,
People people want to hear honesty. You know what I mean?
well, I never thought of it. I just as I wrote the book, I felt like if kids look at me flying over the Super Bowl,
Hmm.
they might automatically assume, oh, he must be the just the best and smartest, most amazing guy ever made to shoot cameras. And the truth is the opposite. It's my story is I show up on time, I
Yep.
work hard,
Yeah.
I don't complain, and if there's problems, I don't blame other people or the equipment. I just
Hmm.
do my best to work through it so that everybody has, the best experience that we can have. And
I wish more
just
people had your outlook, because that's like the downfall of the film industry that I see is arrogance and just people just thinking that they're so much more than they are, and faking it and not just accepting what their role is, what they've done and their mistakes, and just build off it.
well, that it's not just the film industry. I think that's human
Well, no, I
nature.
think it's yeah, it's human nature. It's true.
So I was very deliberate when I wrote the stories, and as my buddy was reading the book, he told me one day, he goes, "I'm sorry to tell you this, but you need to call this book Help from Above." And I said, "Okay." So I changed the title. So the
Yeah.
book is called Help from Above, and I think probably what he was noticing as he looked at the different stories was I kept getting at different times in my life, I kept getting in trouble, almost dying. I should be dead.
Yeah.
And you start when you see that many times, you might start to wonder if maybe there's a higher power that's helping me because it's
Right.
definitely nothing smart on my part that I'm still alive. I've
Right.
been helped by somebody to get to where I am.
Yeah. I can tell you, I almost died in a helicopter. Um,
Uh-oh.
I've never been I was never a fan after that. I was so excited to go up first time in a helicopter. So excited. I think I talked about it in one of my other podcasts, but long story short, we were in a Huey, massive windstorm hit. We were literally about 45 degrees and just knifing down because the wind crossed this way. So we lost all our lift and we were in the middle of a turn and we just started going knifing down. And it was me and my DP Giles Dunning and Vincent Foyer. And yeah, I was trying to unclick my DP and kick him out, but he was above me. So I'm trying to kick him like up out of the window because he was doing a handheld. And thank God, like I think we got about 20 feet off the ground, and it just the flying bathtub came back to life, and they landed, and we were like, we're done. I was like, I'm good, like I'm out.
Well,
But
it came to my attention, I don't know after how many years, but at some point in my career it came to my attention that there are guys who will not set foot in a helicopter.
oh yeah,
A- As a rule, there
yeah,
there are
it's in their
guys,
contract.
yeah, they just figured out whether they saw a helicopter crash or they know how
Yeah,
stupid production can be,
yeah.
they just will not go. So like when the helicopter sequence comes up on the shot list,
There's a
they're
helicopter guy. They're like, get the
yeah.
helicopter guy. It ain't it. I know DPs are like, it ain't me. Get the helicopter guy. Like,
Yeah, and
yeah,
and to your point about underwater, that's something that I think about too, is I would never mess with anything underwater.
yeah.
There's just too many dumb things I could do to hurt myself, while I'm distracted with the workflow of whatever we're
Yeah,
doing.
I just did Black Panther 2. I was on the reshoots or pickups or whatever it was over at CBS Radford in LA, and we they whacked together a 60-foot tank. And it was cool. It was fun. I personally love underwater work. And it's funny being back in Maine and like, you know, growing up because I was born, oh, not born, but I was born in the Caribbean, but I kind of grew up between Maine and the Caribbean back and forth. And I spent a lot of time on the ocean. Like, my dad was a sailor. I've been on the water my whole life. So for me, it was like Deadliest Catch and diving, and it all circumvents like how I was raised, I guess. Like, I grew up in St. Thomas and St. John in the British Virgin Islands, or I was born in Tortola in the British Virgin Islands, but yeah, so it's like, me in a sailboat or doing underwater work, and it felt natural, like to do camera work underwater because it's like I could swim before I could walk. So, but definitely, it's totally different than flying. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's crazy. Like for me, I feel safer underwater, and you feel safer in the air. Like,
Well, I think that those are two environments for filmmakers where it's very easy to hurt yourself.
yeah.
And, you know, I'm guessing diving might be similar because in flying, when we're doing low level work, we don't
Oh
really
yeah.
have, to your point about losing lift, when we're low level for camera work, we don't really have room for error.
Yeah.
And pilots who do not fly cameras for a living, uh, they actually don't really fly that way normally. In
Right.
fact, kind of fly the opposite, where they always take off and they smoothly climb to
Hmm.
about 50 stories. Because from that altitude, if the engine quits, they have enough inertia and energy
Yeah.
to safely come down and
Hmm.
land. Whereas below that, you don't. If you lose power, you just crash. So, so for them to have to now come down, you know,
It's auto gyrate. Is that what it's called?
auto rotation is
Auto
what they
rotation.
do
That's it.
if
Yeah.
they lose their engine. And so if these guys suddenly have to become down to treetop level, well, because of that rule, they generally do not fly down there, and so they're very unaccustomed
Right.
to the hazards. It's very easy for them to hit wires. It's basically easy because they're adding an additional task, which is moving the camera. Like now they're doing your job. So now
Right.
they're moving the camera to tell a story, which can be that can become an all-consuming distraction. Plus, they're surrounded by hazards they don't normally have when they're
Right.
flying. And I'm guessing underwater work might be similar where, you may be an avid scuba diver, but if you suddenly have to work underwater with all of these additional distractions, it's very easy to just miss basic things that
Hmm.
you never would miss if you were just diving,
Yeah.
probably.
No, totally. It's also in the same. I think it's speaking the same verbiage. Um, you've got divers and you have grips, but or camera operators, but it's like you're taking two separate worlds and colliding them, and if you get too focused on one aspect, you miss some real simple basic things, and it gets you in a lot of trouble real quick. You know what I mean? Like, if you're too focused on the shot and you're not paying attention to your gauges or not paying attention to something, and I'll tell you, do you I'm trying to think his name. I had a really really good friend, um, who he's still a operator. He does helicopter work, but he went down in he worked for Brain Farm back when we were all working over at Brain Farm. But he went down in a helicopter. They clipped I think they clipped a wire. Oh no, the pilot had a heart attack, and so he had been an operator forever, and he's sitting in the passenger seat. He's got his head in the box, and he's operating the camera, and the pilot just has a heart attack and just keels over. They start going down. Well, he's never flown, but he had so many hours of sitting in the jockey seat, and he grabbed a stick and just he did a controlled crash, and I think it took them an hour or two till they found him. I mean, he almost lost his leg. It was a whole disaster. He's a super good friend of mine, and I'm so sorry, dude. Please forgive me for forgetting your name. Like, but yeah, it was wild, man. And he's actually still he got back and started flying again. Like he's back up in the air, like doing camera operating, and it was really cool to see him back out. But yeah, he was over at with K2, K2 or any of the guys over at
Oh
yeah.
yeah, I know all those
Yeah,
guys.
yeah. So he was over with all those guys. Yeah, I work with K2. I did that movie Devotion. Um my DP was Michael Fitzmaurice, and he did all the aerials for Top Gun, and then we did Devotion after that. And yeah, and it's funny, they actually Fitzy and K2 called me in, and I welded up a I welded up a lighting mount to hang one of those like the helicopter searchlights out of the driver's side of it was a Blackhawk. So I used the 50 cal mount and welded up a rig, so we hung the searchlight, and then they put me in the commercial. It was an Apple commercial, so I'm actually in the commercial as the
Nice.
door rescue guy, like operating the searchlight. So it was great. I got paid to weld this light rig, and I got paid to be on the commercial. So yeah, it was kind of
Another
a win-win.
another day in the life.
Yeah. Well, so what do you got cooking on the books now?
Oh, by the way, Jared Slater is your buddy.
Jared Slater.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I've known
Jared.
I've
I'm gonna
known
have to edit that out.
yeah, you can edit it.
No, I've known Jared for since I knew him when I was a pro snowboarder. So I knew
Oh, I
him.
didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I've known Jared and all the Brain Farm guys. Like I've been with those guys for forever, from day one, basically.
Wow, you get around to a lot of different circles of
Yeah.
specialties and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I was a pro snowboarder, a chef, a sailor, and key grip and an AD at one point, art
Oh,
department.
wow.
Yeah.
I always admire the ADs because managing people, I work alone. So
Yeah.
it's
It's yeah.
usually me and a pilot, and sometimes not so much anymore, but in the early days, they used to send a producer or a director
Right.
with us, but they don't really do that anymore. So pretty much it's just me and one other guy. So when I see the ADs and they're managing 50 or 100 people
Right.
and their schedules and all the issues that pop up, I always admire how they navigate that because that's something I couldn't do.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I don't know. I was thinking about this the other day. It's when you think about how many people are in the film industry, and how much work is going on, and then you think about all the aerial shots and all the underwater shots. You think about like all the expanse of it, and it's pretty wild to see that. I mean, I currently think that the industry is kind of like slowed down, and not in a good way. Like, I definitely noticed and also like the underwater works become very specialized, which is good, and the aerial works very specialized, which is good.
Yeah,
And I think it needs
right.
to be. And I think it needs to be. I think it needs to have more regulation on all of that. Because I can tell you, when I left LA, the just watching the new group come in, where like I remember when I was coming up, and I'm watching, and I'm watching the upper guys, and I'm like striving to be them. And now it's like when I left, I was watching these kids come in, and it's like, man, they're just taking they're taking risks. They're taking risks, and they're taking jobs for less money, and I think it's brutal. I think it's detrimental.
Well, I mean, again, it's not just the movie business or
No,
the
no,
TV
it's it's
business.
it's 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 a general like, but
It's human
but
nature. It's
it
human nature.
is.
I adore YouTube and social media.
Oh yeah,
And the videos that there's videos that I'll watch 8 times over, and it always starts with a headline that says they didn't want to pay for the tree expert
yeah,
to cut down the tree. And then, so now, of course, like everyone else, millions of people, I'm watching to see
Yeah,
what
yeah.
happens. And this, 80,000 pound tree goes the wrong way and
Yeah.
actually takes out I was just watching one this morning. It didn't just land on the house, it landed on the house, it broke some of the supports, and the
Oh.
entire house collapsed.
Hey, hey,
You
but
know,
but the tree got cut down.
yeah, good news. The
and
tree
and
is
they,
down.
and they save money.
Well,
No,
and so
it's
when you
hilarious
just
because I watch YouTube like I'm the same as you. I think like I love like carnage on YouTube. I love just chaos, and it's like I
train
find
wrecks,
myself on YouTube just watching like boat wrecks. Like one of my favorites is there's a lot of like boat it's like boat fails. It's like
oh yeah.
like like boats coming out of there's an outlet in Florida. I forgot the name of it, and it's just like it's super notorious.
Yeah,
And
haul
it's
over inlet.
oh yeah, there it is. It's so good. Like
Yeah,
anything for that's just like it's gold.
there are entire YouTube channels with the word haul over in them
Yeah,
because they literally just bring a lawn chair and a tripod. They just
yeah,
sit there and
yeah.
watch boats try to go through these waves.
I, I can watch those. There's a couple other channels too that are nothing but people just try at the trying to put their boats in and out like on the ramps. It's like a boat ramp something. I forgot the name of his channel. It's just genius. It's like people just trying to figure out how to like they're like losing their whole vehicles into trying to
Right.
put a boat in, and oh, it's priceless.
Yeah, and the just like the trees, falling on the house is the same with boats and boat ramps because it's guys who don't do it all the time or don't do it every day. And that's why the boat ramp is so interesting because they bought a $40,000 boat a year ago. It sat because they're busy.
Right.
And this is the second time they've had it out and they
Yeah.
have not a clue. And the boat salesman probably took them to the ramp and showed them 8 things not to do,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that was a year ago.
Yeah.
And so, so like you said, all of a sudden, the truck is now underwater.
Yeah.
And and I think, whether it's boat ramps or tree surgeons or the film and television industry, I think
It's the same thing. Yeah.
you're always going to find people who don't specialize in a thing, being asked to do it because it's cheaper than hiring, like you said,
Hmm.
a specialist. And now they're having all these surprises of like, oh, I didn't know that would happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
like you said, it can be
so
dangerous.
true. It's so true. And I mean, I gotta say, like, I can't tell you how many people that talk to me and go and like, I've had so many people on Facebook and Instagram hit me up going like, "Hey, I want to do water work. Like, I work in the film industry. I want to do water work." But it's like, okay, look, you got to understand, like, you you can't be good. You like just because you're a good diver. Like, I had one guy, he's like, I'm a professional underwater. Like, he'd worked on oil rigs. Like, he was a crazy underwater welding, like saturation diver. And he's like, yeah, he's like, I want to come work with you guys. And I was like, you don't understand. I'm like, it really has nothing to do with that. And at the same time, it's like then you get these guys who are like amazing grips, but they're like, well, I just need to go get a cert and then I can do it underwater. It's like it's not the same. Like there is a massive difference. I'll be honest, like by no means am I some expert underwater grip. Like I've been very lucky enough to have worked underneath Soda Pop, and I've worked with I mean Ian Takahashi. Like he's one of the best underwater operators that I've ever worked with. Like in Soda Pop's, I think the best underwater grip I've ever worked with, like by far. And I tried to learn everything I could from him. And and anytime you think that you know what you're doing underwater, you're in trouble. Like don't ever think that you know what the hell you're doing underwater, and especially in the film industry, like because it's now you're not focused on just diving. You have to like kind of put that a little bit aside because you're doing grip work. So it's like it's really easy to get, you're not doing one job. Now you're doing two, and you're doing it at the same time. And they're both dangerous. Like, gripping underwater is dangerous. Like, and, I mean, gripping is dangerous in general, but, and same with you. It's like, you're in a helicopter, but it's like, okay, well, you're in a helicopter, but okay, now you're operating a camera. So it's like, it's two, you're taking two things, putting them together.
Well, there are two things that can kill you,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
one one is falling out of the sky, and one is drowning.
Yeah.
And there's such a weird science to both. Um, like you mentioned, K2. These guys who fly cameras for a living,
Yeah.
they
I mean,
have
K
learned.
K2 is amazing.
Yeah, and
Love him.
he
Well,
comes
his
from a
dad's, yeah,
he comes
pedigree.
from a film flying family.
Yeah.
So those guys have developed a skill set for doing a type of work that most pilots would never do.
Yeah.
Um, the same way that a lot of camera guys won't get in a helicopter.
Hmm.
A lot of pilots won't mess with that kind of, they call it formation flying, where the other
Right.
aircraft is super
Yep.
close to you.
Yep.
Because they may have heard horror stories. And if you don't fly close to other aircraft for a living, it takes you just a second or two
Just
to,
whoop.
it gets away from you.
Yeah.
And so these guys who do it for a living, they have such a uh, amazing skill set and ability to, especially with multiple aircraft, to bring them
Hmm.
together without hitting each other
Hmm.
and get the shot list that we want to get.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas if you have someone, a pilot who's never done that before, it's very easy to spend half of your time where nothing is working
Right.
because, you know, if you told a pilot they were going to go fly formation, they wouldn't even imagine how
Yeah.
challenging it is to even find the other aircraft. A lot of times, we'll do a break, so we want to see the other aircraft turn
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah. You
fly
want the
out
belly,
behind.
that belly shot, right?
Okay, well, what happens next is, in the case of K2, he's already moving because he knows how to go back and get the other
Hmm.
aircraft within a few seconds, then boom, we're formed up again. But
Yep.
if a guy is not comfortable or accustomed to flying formation,
Right.
we're now just lost. And
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
was talking to a buddy of mine the other day, and he was on a show where he had a pilot who didn't really know what they were doing, and they lost the other aircraft. And so he got immediately super nervous because he didn't have a film pilot, and he right
Right.
away had a sense of, you know what? I think this guy might hit the other
Yeah.
helicopter. And so he's straining himself to look down. So he gets his face right against the window, just enough to see the other helicopter underneath them coming up to hit them.
Oh my
So
God.
he yells at his pilot to bail out and dodge the other helicopter. But if he hadn't have done that, they would have hit.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's insane. I mean, it's funny. It's like talking about that on Deadliest Catch, Jimmer. Jimmer was my captain, and I had to. It took me 2 or 3 days to get in sync with Jimmer to basically turn him into a dolly grip
Right.
because I'm on the crane. We're all in headsets. Everyone else is inside. I'm the only one outside, basically on the crane. Jimmer's in the wheelhouse, but I had to explain to him like, okay, because the crane, sitting in the cradle, if you were going up a wave like this, you couldn't have the crane the same direction as the wave, because cranes, when they're level and balanced, they don't want to move. They don't care what, the boat can do whatever it wants. The crane doesn't want to move. It's balanced. So you had to turn it 90 degrees in its cradle. So basically, if a wave's going like this, the crane has to be 90 degrees to the wave. Otherwise, and that way it'll roll in, like, as we're literally doing this, it'll roll. But if it's this way, it just smashes on the boat and just breaks. So I had to like get with Jimmer and be like, okay, so you know, thank God I knew port, star. I grew up on boats, so like I understand nautical jargon. Dave, the DP, like he doesn't really understand port starboard and all, and also he's inside like those guys are inside looking at a monitor, so they're not really seeing what's going on in the real world outside. So basically, Dave would go like, "Hey, I want to do this," and then I would go, "All right, Jimmer." I'm like, uh, on the next wave, like tack to port, and he'd be like, "Well," and as we'd roll up, he'd tack, and I'd swing the crane around to keep it parallel to the waves.
Right.
And it took like about 3 days, to about 2 days actually, and then me and Jimmer we were in sync. We were like we had our own little like symmetry, and I'm sure like as a helicopter camera operator and dealing with your pilots, like you've got to have some type of that same situation going on, right?
Well,
Because I mean, your
I
your your head's in the bag, right? And you're operating.
I was very fortunate because I joined the motion picture television industry in a very swashbuckling age where before drones, the only
Yeah,
way to get a shot from the air is we had to put a camera on a helicopter
well
and
aware.
go fly over the city. And the company I was working for had invented gyro stabilized gimbals. And so they had the first ones that were used on any movies or television shows.
What system was that?
That was a company called Westcam.
Westcam.
And
That's right. Yep.
their technology came from the military,
Yeah, yeah.
and they were the first ones to really build a number of systems which were gyro stabilized and had television and movie cameras on them.
Yep.
And so the power of gyro stabilization, like I was just talking to a commander of a Navy destroyer,
Mm-hmm.
and he was telling me about his 5-inch gun. Because if you look at a destroyer in
Right.
1945, World War II, destroyers had guns all over them.
Yeah, yeah.
Now there's one gun in the front.
Yeah. It's like they got one gun.
There's
And
a
it's
bunch
like,
of missiles and stuff, but there's one main gun, 5-inch gun. And he said, well, I can shoot ships, I can shoot this, I can shoot this. And he goes, and I can shoot incoming missiles. And I said, it's that good? And he goes,
yeah.
it's that good.
Yeah.
So his gun is gyro stabilized.
Yeah, yeah.
So as the ship is moving, his gun is holding its aim,
It's
and
like,
so it can basically hit a bullet with its own
yeah.
bullet to
I
protect the
mean,
ship.
it's like the tanks nowadays. I mean, all our tanks. So I just did the I don't know if you've seen the new Navy recruitment commercial.
I haven't.
Oh, check it out. I I
I gotta go
I
watch it.
keyed I keyed it. We flew in on the Nimitz, like full on flew in, and we flew in on one of the the bulk carriers, and we missed. Came in, we missed the hook and bounced off the deck and went back around. Like, I mean, it was already terrifying because there's no windows. You're sitting backwards, and they're like, and they don't tell you when you're gonna land. You're just like,
Oh,
and all of a sudden, like, wham, you bounce off the deck, and I was like, why are we not? Why are we
we're
not
still
feeling like,
flying.
yeah? And all of a sudden, it was like, and all of a sudden, we're back in the air, and I was like, oh, that's not good. Like, and it's really funny. They even said they're like, yeah, the pilot wanted to apologize. He's like, and they said it's really, really, really rare that a civilian, because they always try and treat civilians like I flew in, with the film crew, and they're like, yeah, it's really rare that civilians would ever miss a trap. They call it a trap. And I actually, um, speaking of which, I have it over here. I talked to our liaison, and the guys on the flight deck that have the helmets with the two pieces. They got
Yes.
and I was like, hey man, I really want one of these. And he's like, here you go. He's like, don't tell anyone. So I got one off the USS Nimitz. Like I got my own flight helmet. It's pretty badass. Like it's my favorite thing I got. I mean, I got some cool stuff off the job, but that was like I got to go on a submarine. I was on the USS Santa Fe, um,
Oh wow.
or New Mexico. I was on the yeah, it was in New Mexico. and I was on the Nimitz, and I went on two of the destroyers. Um, and then they had me do the underwater camera operating for it.
Oh, wow.
So that was cool.
Nice. Join the
Yeah.
Navy, everybody.
Yeah. No, it was, man, like I think to this day, it's probably one of my top jobs. Like, you know, it was just such a fun experience. I mean, how can you beat like living on, I lived on an aircraft carrier for 5 days. Like, how do you beat that? Like,
Well,
welcome to the
most,
film industry. It's like, it's like you get the dream jobs. I've had a lot of horrible film jobs. I've had a lot of great jobs, but I will say living on an aircraft carrier for 5 days was like, and then going in a submarine, that was pretty darn cool. All right, Dave. Well, I think we should wrap this up, but
let's do it.
and I think that we should do this again.
Oh, awesome.
I
Okay.
think there's more to talk about.
Well, yeah, it's
Um,
good to hear some of your stories.
yeah. Oh, it's good to hear some of your stories. I mean, that's what this is all about. It's all about sharing stories, And I think that the more stories that are out there, look, man, if we don't tell these stories, like they're just gonna go, they're gonna go into the ether, you know. And it's really like I can tell you, like working before I left in LA, I was working with all these young kids, and they would just sit around and be like, "Tell me another story." And like for me, it's like I'm just spitting history of like, I don't know, well, this is one time, but for them, it's like, you know, it was a lot for them, and I think they need to hear how it was and how it can be, and and just the realities of the whole business. It's like, I mean, everyone wants to hear film stories, like everybody does.
Well, I don't know if they all want to, but
Oh, they're gonna.
well, some of those stories could save their life because
Yeah,
especially kids entering the business, they might
yeah.
the idea of moving a camera or attaching a camera to something that's moving, and they might not imagine how quickly that can become
It can be
extremely
super
dangerous.
dangerous, and I will say it, between you and me, it does scare me. The new batch coming in is a little bit terrifying. I didn't really want to bring it up, but I see these kids that are just so young and so eager and so aggressive, and they're not listening to what's going on around them and listening to the people that have been there and done that. They're just like, your guys are old timers, you don't know. And it's like, yeah, well, we do know. And we and we know because we've seen a lot of stuff, and we've learned from the guys that were telling us what we're telling you. You know what I mean? Like, you, there was people that told me like, hey, slow down, da 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 da. And it's like, and I listened to him, and I'm so glad I did. And I just feel like that's kind of slipping to the wayside these days. But it is what it is. I'm close to retirement, so I don't care. I got 25 years in.
Well, like you said, at least you're taking time to share your stories so that if kids do
Yeah,
want to listen, they could learn,
yeah,
from one or two of your adventures of, oh, okay, so that's how not to do that.
yeah, exactly. I got a whole list out not to do stuff. But I tell you what, Dave, it's been an absolute honor. I'm so glad you took the time out to hang out with me. I mean,
Oh, me too.
to this day, my favorite photo I have of me personally, like my favorite photo, is the one you took on the helicopter of me on the back of the boat when I'm sitting on the crane. You just hovered over, and you were like, I remember hearing on the walkie, you told the DP, you're like, hey, tell him we're gonna film right now. And I was like, oh yeah. It's like, it was awesome.
Yeah, so not everybody would think to take time to shoot behind the scenes, but you got to do it.
Oh man, you always gotta I've got so much good BTS, and yeah. All right, sir. God bless. I love you.
God bless you. Yeah, I love you too. Thank
I
you
can't
for
wait
having me
to
on.
yeah, I can't wait to do this again.
Awesome. Sounds good.
All right. See you, buddy.
Yeah.